Welcome back to the Lakeside Productions YouTube channel. In this series I'm repairing a 1940 40-foot seaplane tender and converting it back into a liveaboard, which it was converted to after World War II. The boat is constructed of double diagonal mahogany hull planking and oak ribs. Starting back on the interior, I needed to replace another rib. In order to cut out the old rib, I used both the angle grinder and the multi-tool for this. I filled the recess with tinned epoxy and then also the inner face of the mahogany planking. So I needed to pre-drill the oak from the outside, from the exterior of the boat, in through the double diagonal mahogany planking. So in order to do this, I just temporarily secured the oak rib in place with one brass screw. That allowed me then to pre-drill from the outside. So before doing this, I also drilled pilot holes through the hull from the interior. So on the outside I could see them clearly. I also used a smaller size drill bit, and then I just needed to pre-drill them again through the hull, or through the hull into the oak, using the right size drill bit for the screws that I'm using. So the bow rope needed to be changed out. As you can see, it's just an old nylon rope that over the years has deteriorated from the sunlight. The UV broke it down. So I replaced it with this lovely kind of soft rope I got from Toplicht, and it's really cool. It's made from recycled bottles, which is great too. So once I had all the holes pre-drilled, I glued up the oak rib using thickened epoxy.
Yeah, excellent.
Good job. Yeah. Yeah, it's pulling them in. So I thickened up epoxy using the low density filler from West System. So I just skimmed that over the countersunk screw heads to fill those countersinks. So to follow on from the wheelhouse cabin roof, to complete this job, you might have seen in a previous episode I have this all fiberglassed, so that's done. And now I just want it as an extra precaution to make sure that there's not going to be any water ingress into that roof, or in underneath the fiberglass. Just as an extra safety measure, you can apply this fiberglass tape. It's basically just a length of fiberglass. And it's nice and even, it's nice and uniform. So I made sure to sand down any thickened epoxy to get it nice and smooth, make sure it was uniform, that has been applied to the sides of the wheelhouse cabin roof. And then I also brushed on just regular epoxy, neat epoxy. That way then when you stick on the fiberglass tape, it's the same case for working with fiberglass. So it's going to stick to it nicely, it's going to soak it up as well. So you've got your surface primed, and then you go back and make sure everything's even, uniform, that there's no air bubbles underneath it. And then I just applied another layer of epoxy. I basically just went around with neat epoxy again and just brushed it on, making sure again that there was no air bubbles getting underneath the epoxy tape. And you know that you're doing a good job when the fiberglass is turning translucent, so basically that you can see through it and see the wood surface beneath your fiberglass. few days later, making sure that the epoxy had plenty of time to set off, I sanded down the wheelhouse cabin roof. Again, it basically just has multi-marine primer, Epifin's multi-marine primer on there. I sanded it lightly with 240 grit sandpaper on the orbital sander, the small little handheld sander. And then once that was done, I obviously degreased it using just tinners on a towel or on a tack cloth, and basically that gets all of your debris or dust, particles that might be there. Make sure that it's not contaminated. And then it was ready to take another coat of Epifin's multi-marine primer. So this is 2 coats, and then after this it's going to be ready for the top coat. I'm going to go with Epifin's monocoat for the top coat, and then it should be nice and sealed well. And it's incredibly bright. Like when I was painting this on, it was so bright. But the fantastic thing about it is that when you put your hand on that roof, it's perfect. You can't even feel any heat. It stays nice and cool, which is what you want. You don't want those timbers heating up, and it's great to see that, especially on the hot days. So it was around this time I was in the wheelhouse cabin. I had the camera set up on the tripod. I had the cover rolled back from the wheelhouse roof, but I had the tripod set up on the cover. And I've done this a dozen times before, but a gust of wind got underneath the actual cover of the boat and lifted one of the legs of the tripod, and I heard a big splash, and I was like, no. I ran outside, stripped off my trousers, jumped, because I had my phone in my pocket and tools and everything, and then I just grabbed that camera and tripod. It was just in about 3 foot of water, if even, and I heard the shutter going off. Like, it was crazy. So I just took out the battery and dried it up as much as possible. Used a hoover to vacuum out all that loose water, put it in a bag of silica gel, and took off the lens. And now it's been in the hot press drying for the last week, and I just hope that it will work again. But I've had this camera for over 6 years now, so it's done its time. But let's see what'll happen. It's fantastic to see, even if the camera doesn't work again, it served me well. But it would be great to see it work again. And yeah, it was just unfortunate, and I should have thought about it. Like I said, I had the camera set up there a dozen times before, and it's never been an issue. But just this day, the wind got under it and pushed it in. So I got to thank my college mate Kieran, who gave me a lens of his camera using his Sony Camera A7 Mark III for now. And that's keeping me going until I get a replacement camera. So thanks, Kieran. So as some of you may know from previous episodes, we have a leak at the transom of the boat. We have a leak that's coming in with, we believe to be, or looks to be, a gasket. It's at a very tight spot to be able to see, but with those Volvo Pent engines, there's 2 outdrives, and it looks to be coming in just at one of the seals or the gaskets for the outdrive on the left side, on the port side. So there's a bilge pump running that pumps out every 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes, and that's keeping that leak at bay. It's not ideal, of course, and it's been a long time we've been putting up with that until we come up with a plan, and we have a plan, an idea to get this seal and hopefully to repair it. So I also was just doing a quick thing here where I used a vacuum, I used a hoover to remove any water that was in the different sections of the bilge. And what happens is a lot of the water gets past the pump. So a lot of the water gets past the bilge pump and makes its way into the wheelhouse cabin bilge, or that section of the bilge. So I just used the Sikaflex sealant and put that in basically at the scuppers, or at the the holes that you have at each bilge section, so I could keep the water in one section of the bilge. So I put a second bilge pump in there as well. It's on a 12-volt battery that I just picked up the other day, which is great. So it just means that if the power does go out, and it has gone out in the past, and then the boat's filled with water, it just means that it keeps the bilge dry, and you have it's a safety measure there. That's you don't have to worry about anything at night, which is great. We do have a plan to get the boat in now in the next week or so, stern in to the shoreline. We're going to jack it up on 2 jacks, distribute that over 2 planks, a plank for each jack, so it's not a lot of weight on the actual bottom of the boat. And then maybe set up some tires as well to help but take some absorption of if there's any waves or anything like that from boats passing by, and that'll get the actual boat high enough out of the water, and we can assess that leak. And then we can also take out the 2 engines, because unfortunately, which we thought before, that the Volvo Penta engines were savable, or at least that one was salvageable, but it looks to be that they're not going to be easy to get up and running again, cost a lot of money, and it's just going to take a lot of time. So we're going to probably put in 2 other diesel engines in it in the future, but for now we could take the 2 engines out, we could get them craned out, and then that gives us the opportunity. It keeps the boat nice and light. I replaced another frame on the starboard side, stuck 2 lollipop sticks together and cut them to size that was manageable, and then taped them up, pre-drilled it, and that took the size of the pencil, and then transferred the curve of the hull planking to the actual frame. I just cut that out then with the skill saw. I also used the hand plane then to finish it off, take down those high spots to get it more accurate. And really I should be using a spoke shave for this, but the plane worked well. But definitely I got to pick up a spoke shave as the next tool in my inventory. It would be great. I'm trying to find the right size drill bit for these brass screws so I can pre-drill from the outside. So once I glued up the frame with thick and epoxy, this time using microfibers, I secured it in place. First, I obviously did pilot holes through the hull planking from the interior. That way on the outside I could then locate those pilot holes and use the right size drill bit to pre-drill the actual frame, and then I could screw my brass screws in place. As always, using thick and epoxy then with the low density filler allowed me to skim over those countersunk screw holes and to fill them nice and flush. Again, don't worry about the mess of this epoxy job around here. This is all going to be sanded flush, and then we'll be ready to paint a primer in place. It's one of the jobs to add to the list in the near future, but no, we'll get it done. And we're obviously going to go with the Epiphanes multi-marine primer, and that'll do this job nicely, as it looks great on the far side, but again, needs to be touched up, but we'll get there. So guys, make sure to check out the previous episode if you haven't seen it yet. Thank you for watching this episode, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. I do have a PayPal link in the description below if you feel like supporting my project there. It really means a lot to me. Reading your comments, you know, the fact that you have told me your stories about what work you've done in the past, what boat projects, what boat builds you're doing now. It's just fantastic to read those comments. So let me know what you're up to in the comments below. And as always, guys, stay productive and have fun creating. I will see you all in the next episode.